The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the endless dunes of the Sahara Desert. The year was 2147, and Earth had become a patchwork of extremes. Towering megacities glittered on the coasts, while vast stretches of land lay barren and forgotten. In one such desolate region, Amir Khalid navigated his battered solar-powered rover through the golden waves of sand. A scavenger by trade, he spent his days searching for scraps of technology left behind by humanity's collapse. But today, something unusual caught his eye. A faint plume of smoke rose in the distance, curling lazily against the pale blue sky. Curiosity tugged at him as he steered toward it. When he arrived, the sight before him stole his breath. Half buried in the sand was a sleek, otherworldly spacecraft, its surface scorched but intact. It wasn't human-made. That much was clear from the strange symbols etched into its metallic hull. Around it, fragments of debris littered the ground like confetti after a cosmic celebration. Amir stepped out of his rover cautiously, his boots sinking slightly into the soft sand. He scanned the area, his heart pounding. Was this some kind of trap, or perhaps a hoax? But then he heard it, a faint sound, almost like a whimper. Following the noise, he found her. She lay crumpled near the wreckage, her body trembling despite the scorching heat. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, shifting colors like oil on water. Long silvery hair framed her delicate face, which bore features both familiar and alien. She wore a tattered robe-like garment that seemed woven from light itself. Her large, almond-shaped eyes fluttered open as Amir approached, locking onto his with an intensity that made him freeze. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice melodic yet strained. To Amir's surprise, she spoke in halting English, though her accent was unlike anything he'd ever heard. "I'm Amir," he replied hesitantly, crouching beside her. "Are you hurt?" She nodded weakly, clutching her side. Blood, or something resembling it, oozed from a gash on her arm. Without thinking, Amir tore a strip from his scarf and wrapped it around the wound. As he worked, he noticed faint markings glowing softly on her skin, intricate patterns that pulsed like living circuits. They reminded him of ancient constellations mapped across the night sky. "My name," she murmured, pausing as if struggling to remember. "Liren." "Liren," Amir repeated slowly, testing the unfamiliar syllables. "What happened here? Where did you come from?" Her gaze drifted to the wrecked ship, sadness clouding her luminous eyes. "Cythera," she said finally. "My home. Dying. I came seeking refuge. Your world. We thought it safe." Amir frowned. Refuge. From everything he'd seen, Earth was anything but safe. Still, there was no denying the desperation in her voice. Whatever she'd fled, it must have been terrible. As the sun dipped lower, painting the horizon in hues of orange and red, Amir helped Liren into his rover. He didn't know what to make of her or the situation, but one thing was certain. Leaving her here would mean certain death. And so, with more questions than answers, he set off into the desert, carrying not just an injured stranger, but also the weight of responsibility for her life, and perhaps for secrets far greater than he could imagine. By the fourth day, Amir and Liren had fallen into a fragile rhythm. They traveled during the cooler hours of dawn and dusk, avoiding the scorching midday sun that turned the desert into an oven. Liren had begun to adapt to Earth's harsh conditions, learning how to ration water, navigate by the stars, and even use her glowing energy to start small fires for warmth at night. Yet despite her growing resilience, Amir could see the toll their journey was taking on her. Her movements were slower now, her luminous markings dimming with each passing hour. One evening, as they prepared camp near a cluster of jagged rocks, Amir noticed something unusual in the sky, a faint hum followed by the distant glint of metal reflecting sunlight. He squinted upward, his stomach sinking as he recognized the shape of drones circling high above. "Trouble," he muttered under his breath, grabbing a pair of binoculars from the rover. Liren looked up, her eyes narrowing. "What are those?" "Drones," Amir replied grimly. Probably sent by scavenger hunters or worse. Corporate mercenaries. Someone must have picked up traces of your ship crashing. Her expression darkened. They're looking for me. Amir nodded. Yeah. If they find you, they'll take you apart piece by piece to figure out what makes you tick. We need to move. But before they could pack up, another sound filled the air. The low rumble of engines approaching fast. A convoy of armored vehicles appeared on the horizon, kicking up clouds of dust as they sped toward them. At their head was a sleek black truck emblazoned with the logo of Dominion Dynamics, one of the most powerful corporate entities on Earth. They found us, Lorraine whispered, her voice trembling. Not yet, Amir said firmly, grabbing her arm. Come on. They scrambled into the rover, but it was clear they wouldn't outrun the convoy. Instead, Amir steered them toward a narrow canyon ahead, hoping its twisting paths would slow their pursuers. As they entered the shadows of the cliffs, Lorraine suddenly grabbed his wrist. There, she exclaimed, pointing to a crack in the rock wall. It was barely wide enough for the rover to squeeze through, but beyond it lay a hidden network of tunnels carved into the stone. Perfect, Amir muttered, veering sharply into the opening. The tires skidded against loose gravel, but they made it inside just as the first vehicle roared past the entrance. Once deep within the tunnels, they killed the engine and sat in silence, listening to the muffled roar of engines fading into the distance. For a moment, relief washed over them, but it didn't last long. We can't stay here forever, Lorraine said quietly. They'll keep searching. I know, Amir replied, rubbing his temples. But maybe this place has something we can use. These tunnels look ancient, could be remnants of old human settlements. As they ventured deeper, the air grew cooler, and the walls began to reveal carvings etched into the stone. Faded murals depicted scenes of lush landscapes, rivers teeming with fish, and people working together to build thriving communities. But other images told a darker story. Skies choked with smoke, rivers drying up, animals lying dead in barren fields. This is your history, Lorraine murmured, tracing her fingers over the carvings. You destroyed yourselves. It's not just us, Amir said bitterly. Every civilization thinks they're invincible until they aren't. Look at Cythera, and now Earth. Before Lorraine could respond, a faint vibration echoed through the tunnel. She froze, her glowing markings flaring instinctively. Something's coming, she whispered. Moments later, a mechanical whirring grew louder, accompanied by beams of light cutting through the darkness. The drones had found them. Amir cursed under his breath. Run. They sprinted down the tunnel, dodging bursts of energy fired by the drones. Lorraine raised her hands, releasing a wave of pulsating light that disabled two of the machines, but more kept coming. Just when it seemed they were cornered, the ground beneath them gave way, sending them tumbling into a cavern below. When the dust settled, Amir groaned, pushing himself upright. Across the cavern, glowing crystals embedded in the walls illuminated rows of ancient machinery and holographic displays. This wasn't just a ruin. It was a vault of forgotten knowledge. Lorraine stared at the crystals, her eyes wide with realization. This is important, she said. Very important. Amir nodded, though his heart raced with dread. Whoever controlled this place might hold the key to saving, or destroying, both their worlds. And judging by the relentless pursuit outside, they weren't the only ones who knew it. The next morning, Amir woke to find Lorraine sitting cross-legged on the roof of the rover, her shimmering hair catching the early sunlight. She was gazing at the horizon, where the desert stretched endlessly like a golden ocean frozen in time. Her glowing markings had brightened again, pulsing gently as if responding to the heat of the rising sun. Sleep well? Amir asked, climbing out of the rover with a canteen in hand. He offered it to her, but she hesitated, examining the clear liquid inside. Water? She asked, tilting her head slightly. Amir nodded. Yeah, you'll need it if you're going to survive out here. She took the canteen cautiously, sniffing it before taking a small sip. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she drank deeply, draining half the container in seconds. When she handed it back, she gave him a grateful smile that softened her otherwise alien features. "This is precious," she said softly. "On Cythera, water became rare long before I left." Amir frowned, stowing the canteen away. "Earth's not much better these days. Most rivers are polluted or dried up. People fight over clean water now." Lyran looked troubled by this revelation, but didn't press further. Instead, she pointed to a cluster of cacti nearby. "What are those?" "Cacti," Amir replied. "They store water inside. If we run out, we can cut them open and drink what's inside." Her curiosity seemed to spark something within her, and for the first time since their meeting, she appeared less overwhelmed by despair. "Teach me," she said firmly. "I want to learn how to live here." Over the next few hours, Amir showed her the basics of desert survival. He demonstrated how to extract moisture from cacti using a knife, how to identify safe plants versus poisonous ones, and how to read the wind patterns to predict sandstorms. Lyran absorbed everything quickly, her sharp mind adapting to the harsh environment faster than he'd expected. At one point, when a snake slithered toward them unexpectedly, she reacted instantly, not with fear, but with calm precision. A faint glow emanated from her hands, and the creature froze mid-strike before slithering away. "What was that?" Amir asked, staring at her in disbelief. "I don't know," she admitted, looking equally startled. "Sometimes, my body reacts without me thinking. It's like an instinct." Amir didn't push for answers. There was too much about her he didn't understand, and perhaps never would. Still, he couldn't deny the sense of wonder creeping into his chest whenever she revealed another piece of her mysterious nature. As the day wore on, they encountered their first real challenge. A massive sandstorm brewing in the distance. The sky darkened ominously, and the wind began to howl, whipping grains of sand into stinging projectiles. Amir hurriedly secured the rover, covering sensitive equipment with tarp while Lyran helped tie down loose items. "We need shelter," he shouted over the rising roar of the storm. Lyran nodded, her eyes scanning the area. Suddenly, she grabbed his arm and pointed toward a rocky outcrop nearby. There, they sprinted through the growing chaos, reaching the rocks just as the full force of the storm hit. Huddled together in a narrow crevice, Amir watched as Lyran extended her arms, her glowing markings flaring brightly. To his astonishment, a thin barrier of light formed around them, deflecting the worst of the sand and wind. "How are you doing that?" he gasped, shielding his face with his sleeve. "I don't know," she replied, her voice strained with effort. "It's like energy flows through me. I can shape it, but only for short bursts." The storm raged on for hours, but thanks to Lyran's strange abilities, they emerged relatively unscathed when it finally passed. As Amir surveyed the damage to their surroundings, he realized they were lucky to have survived. "You saved us," he said, turning to her with newfound respect. She shook her head, exhaustion etched onto her face. "Not entirely. This place is merciless. We cannot rely on miracles forever." Her words lingered in the air as they climbed back into the rover, resuming their journey across the unforgiving desert. For all her strength and resilience, Lyran still bore the weight of disappointment, and Amir couldn't shake the feeling that her presence carried consequences far beyond either of them could yet comprehend. The cavern was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. The air smelled faintly of earth and something metallic, as if the ancient machinery still held traces of its former life. Lyran stood mesmerized by the glowing crystals embedded in the walls, their light pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Amir approached cautiously, his boots crunching against the dusty floor. Each step echoed through the silence, amplifying the weight of where they were and what they might uncover. "This place, it's alive," Lyran murmured, her voice barely audible. She reached out to touch one of the crystals, her fingers brushing its surface. Instantly, The entire cavern lit up with a surge of energy. Holographic projections sprang to life around them, displaying scenes that seemed impossibly old yet vividly real. Amir shielded his eyes from the sudden brightness. "What did you do?" he asked, though awe tinged his tone more than fear. "I didn't mean to," she replied, pulling her hand back quickly. But the images continued to play, showing Earth's history in fragments. Towering forests, sprawling cities, oceans teeming with life. Then came darker visions, factories belching smoke into the sky, rivers choked with waste, deserts spreading like scars across the land. "These are your ancestors' mistakes," Liren said, her voice heavy with sorrow. "They had everything, and they threw it away." Amir clenched his fists, frustration bubbling inside him. "It's not like we don't know what we did wrong. We're living with the consequences every day." "But do you learn?" She shot back, turning to face him. Her glowing markings flared brighter, reflecting her rising emotions. "Cythera fell because we refused to change until it was too late. Are humans any different?" Before Amir could answer, another projection flickered to life, a map of Earth overlaid with lines of energy, connecting various points across the globe. At the center of the map was a symbol resembling the crystals in the cavern. Liren stepped closer, studying it intently. "This must be why my people chose Earth," she said, her voice softening. "These crystals, they're similar to the technology we used on Cythera. Maybe they thought humanity had preserved enough knowledge to help us rebuild." Amar frowned. "If this tech is so important, why bury it down here? Why let the planet fall apart?" Liren shook her head. "Maybe they tried to save it but failed. Or maybe they hid it to protect it from themselves." As they debated, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. The hum of machinery grew louder, and the crystals began to pulse faster, casting shifting patterns of light across the walls. Suddenly, a mechanical voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language neither of them understood. "What now?" Amir muttered, glancing around nervously. Liren raised her hands instinctively, her glowing markings sensing with the rhythm of the crystals. To their astonishment, the voice switched to English. "Welcome, Seeker," it intoned. "You have awakened the archive." "The archive," Amir repeated, incredulous. "It must be some kind of AI," Liren said, her brow furrowing. "An ancient system designed to preserve knowledge." The voice continued. "State your purpose." Liren hesitated before responding. "My world is dying. I came seeking refuge, hoping to find a new beginning. But instead, I found ruin." There was a pause, as if the archive were processing her words. Then it spoke again. "Humanity has squandered its gifts. Yet within you lies potential. Will you restore balance, or repeat the cycle?" Amir felt a chill run down his spine. "That's quite the ultimatum." "It's a choice," Liren whispered, her gaze fixed on the crystals. "For both of us." The tremors intensified, and the holograms shifted, revealing detailed schematics of sustainable energy systems, terraforming techniques, and ecological restoration methods. Liren's eyes widened as she absorbed the information. This was exactly what Cythera needed, but also what Earth desperately required. "We can't just leave this here," she said firmly. "If we take this knowledge, we can help both our worlds." Amir nodded slowly, though unease lingered in his chest. "And if someone else finds it first?" "They won't," Liren vowed, determination hardening her features. "Not while I'm still breathing." As the archive powered down, leaving the cavern dim once more, Amir realized they were no longer just running from danger. They were stepping into a mission far greater than either of them had imagined. With the weight of 2 dying planets resting on their shoulders, there was no turning back. The desert air was thick with tension as dawn broke over the ruins. Amir, Liren, and the rebels crouched behind makeshift barricades, their weapons ranging from crude spears to repurposed mining tools, ready for action. The plan was simple but risky. lure Dominion's forces into the narrow tunnels where their superior numbers would work against them. Once inside, Liraine would use her energy abilities to disable their equipment while the rebels struck from hidden positions. "They're coming," Zara whispered, peering through a crack in the rocks. In the distance, a convoy of armored vehicles roared across the sands, kicking up clouds of dust. Drones buzzed overhead like mechanical vultures, scanning the area for movement. Amir tightened his grip on a metal rod, his knuckles white. "Remember the plan. Stick to the shadows until they're deep enough." Liraine nodded silently, her glowing markings pulsing faintly beneath her tattered robe. She looked calm, almost serene, but Amir could see the strain in her eyes. Using her powers took a toll, and she hadn't fully recovered from their earlier encounters. Still, there was no turning back now. As the convoy neared the entrance to the ruins, Liraine stepped forward, raising her hands. A brilliant burst of light erupted from her palms, blinding the lead vehicle's cameras and forcing it to skid to a halt. The drones swarmed toward her, their sensors locking onto her energy signature. "Now," Zora shouted. The rebels sprang into action, firing makeshift projectiles and triggering traps that sent boulders tumbling down the cliffs. The narrow passageways amplified every sound, creating chaos as Dominion's forces scrambled to regroup. Inside the tunnels, Liraine unleashed wave after wave of pulsating energy, disabling drones and frying circuits in the mercenaries' gear. Sparks flew, and screams echoed through the stone corridors. But the enemy wasn't easily deterred. Reinforcements poured in, armed with heavier weaponry. One soldier managed to flank Liraine, aiming a rifle at her back. Before he could fire, Amir tackled him to the ground, knocking the weapon away. They grappled fiercely, the soldier's strength surprising even Amir. Just as the man reached for a knife, Liraine turned and released a focused beam of energy, sending him sprawling unconscious. "Amir," she called out, her voice strained. "You can't fight them alone. I'm not leaving you." He shot back, grabbing her arm as she staggered under the effort of maintaining her powers. Her skin was warm to the touch, almost feverish, and her markings flickered erratically. Zara appeared beside them, dragging a wounded rebel. "We're losing ground. Fall back to the central chamber." They retreated deeper into the ruins, pursued by relentless gunfire. The rebels fought valiantly, using every trick they had to slow the advance. When they reached the cavern housing the archive, Liraine made a desperate decision. She placed her hands on the glowing crystals, channeling their energy into a massive surge that lit up the entire chamber. "This will collapse the tunnels," she warned, her voice trembling. "Everyone, get out." "No," Amir grabbed her wrist. "You'll kill yourself if you do this." "It's the only way," she said firmly, tears glistening in her luminous eyes. "Trust me." Before Amir could argue further, Zara pulled him away. "She's right. We have to go." Reluctantly, Amir followed as the rebels fled through a hidden exit. Behind them, the cavern shook violently, the ancient machinery groaning under the strain. With a deafening roar, the ceiling collapsed, sealing off the tunnels and trapping Dominion's forces inside. When they emerged into the open desert, gasping for breath, Amir scanned the horizon anxiously. There was no sign of Liraine. "She stayed behind," he murmured, his voice breaking. "She sacrificed herself." Zora placed a hand on his shoulder. "She gave us a chance. Now we honor her by finishing what she started." As the sun rose higher, casting golden light over the dunes, Amir clenched his fists. He didn't know if Liraine had survived, or if she ever could, but one thing was certain: her actions had changed everything. Together, they would carry her legacy forward, fighting not just for Earth, but for hope itself. The rover rumbled across the endless expanse of sand, its solar panels glinting faintly in the fading sunlight. Inside, Amir kept one hand on the steering wheel, while stealing glances at Liraine, who sat slumped against the seat. Her glowing markings had dimmed since they'd left the crash site, but occasional flickers of light still danced beneath her skin like restless fireflies. She stared out the window, her expression unreadable, as if trying to reconcile the barren wasteland outside with the vision of Earth she carried in her mind. "Is this all?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, but it carried a weight that made Amir flinch. "All what?" he replied, though he already knew the answer. "This desert. Your world." She gestured vaguely at the dunes, stretching endlessly in every direction. "We were told your planet was green, full of life, water everywhere." Amir sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It used to be," he admitted, "a long time ago. But we messed it up. Pollution, overuse, wars. Now places like this are all that's left." Lyran turned to him, her luminous eyes wide with disbelief. "You destroyed it, like Exothera." He nodded grimly. "Yeah, pretty much. Some parts are still okay, though. Coastal cities, forests here and there. But not here. This is just dead land." Her shoulders sagged, and for a moment she looked impossibly small, like a child lost in a nightmare. Amir felt a pang of guilt. He wanted to tell her everything would be fine, that Earth could still offer her hope. But lying wouldn't help, not when the truth lay sprawled before them, in acres of dry, cracked earth. They drove on in silence until night fell, blanketing the desert in cool darkness. The stars above shimmered brilliantly, unobscured by city lights or pollution. Lyran leaned closer to the window, her gaze fixed on the heavens. After a while, she pressed something on her wrist, a metallic band embedded into her skin, and a holographic image sprang to life between them. It showed a lush, vibrant planet teeming with towering trees, sparkling rivers, and skies painted in hues no human eye had ever seen. "My home," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Before." Amir studied the projection, awestruck. Even in ruins, Cythera looked breathtakingly beautiful. Then the image shifted, showing barren landscapes eerily similar to the ones outside their rover. The transformation was jarring, a stark reminder of how quickly paradise could turn to dust. "We thought coming here would save us," Lyran continued, her tone heavy with regret. "Your broadcasts, images of blue oceans, green fields, they gave us hope. But now," she trailed off, shaking her head. Amir clenched the steering wheel tighter. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "If I'd known about your people, maybe." "You couldn't have stopped it," she interrupted, surprising him with the sharpness in her voice. "No one can stop collapse once it begins, not unless everyone works together." And even then, she let the thought hang unfinished, her gaze dropping to her lap. For a while, neither spoke. The only sounds were the hum of the rover's engine and the occasional crunch of tires over loose gravel. Eventually, Lyran reached out hesitantly, her fingers brushing against Amir's arm. Her touch was warm, almost electric. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for helping me. Even though my journey ended in disappointment, I am grateful." Amir forced a smile, though it felt hollow. "Don't give up yet," he said. "There's more to Earth than this desert. Maybe we can find somewhere better, for both of us." But deep down, he wasn't sure he believed his own words. As the rover trundled onward under the starlit sky, Amir couldn't shake the feeling that Lyran's arrival had brought more questions than answers, and that the answers might change everything he thought he knew about his own world. The rebels stood in stunned silence as the dust settled over the ruins. The collapse had sealed off the tunnels, cutting off Dominion's forces and buying them precious time. But for Amir, the victory felt hollow. His mind kept replaying Lyran's final moments, the way she looked at him with determination etched into her glowing eyes before disappearing beneath the rubble. "She gave us a chance," Zora said softly, breaking the silence. "Now it's up to us to make sure her sacrifice wasn't in vain." Amir nodded, though his heart ached. He wanted to believe Lyran was still alive somewhere, but deep down, he feared the worst. Still, They couldn't afford to dwell on grief, not when so much depended on what came next. Back at the rebel base, the group immediately set to work implementing the designs recovered from the archive. Using Lyran's knowledge and the schematics, they began constructing advanced irrigation systems powered by renewable energy. Solar panels were rigged to power water pumps that drew moisture from the air, while bioengineered seeds, adapted from the archive's data, were planted in patches of soil revitalized by nutrient-rich compounds. Weeks passed, and progress was slow but steady. Small green shoots began to emerge from the once barren sands, defying the harsh conditions around them. It was proof that even in the most desolate places, life could take root, if given the right tools and care. One evening, as Amir tended to a cluster of young saplings, a faint shimmer caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but then the air rippled and a figure emerged. Her silvery hair glinted under the moonlight, and her skin pulsed faintly with familiar luminescence. "Liren," he whispered, dropping the watering can. She smiled weakly, her body trembling as if every step cost her immense effort. "I survived," she said, her voice barely audible. "The crystals, they protected me." Amir rushed to her side, steadying her as she swayed unsteadily. "You're alive. How is this possible?" "The archive," she explained. "It recognized my energy signature and shielded me during the collapse, but it drained me completely. I've been recovering ever since." Tears welled in Amir's eyes as he helped her sit down. "We thought we'd lost you." "I'm not gone yet," she replied, her tone firm despite her exhaustion. "And there's still work to be done." Over the following days, Liren regained her strength, aided by the rebels' care and the restorative properties of the archive's technology. Together, she and Amir led the effort to expand the oasis, using the knowledge she'd shared to transform more patches of desert into fertile ground. The rebels marveled at her resilience, calling her a symbol of hope, a bridge between worlds. As the weeks turned into months, word of their success spread. Other eco-rebels joined their cause, inspired by the story of an alien girl who had risked everything to save Earth. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn against corporate exploitation, as people rallied behind the vision of a healed planet. On the day Liren decided to leave, to return to Xathera and share Earth's lessons with her people, she stood beside Amir under the stars. The desert no longer seemed so barren. Patches of green stretched across the horizon, a testament to what perseverance and unity could achieve. "Thank you," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder, "for believing in me, for fighting alongside me." Amir smiled, though his heart ached at the thought of saying goodbye. "You taught us how to fight for something bigger than ourselves. Don't forget us, okay?" "I won't," she promised. Then, with one last look at the growing oasis, she stepped into her repaired spacecraft and vanished into the night sky. As the ship ascended, Amir felt a renewed sense of purpose. Liren may have left, but her legacy remained, a seed planted in the hearts of those who dared to dream of a better future. And as long as they nurtured that seed, hope would always find a way to grow. The next morning, Amir and Liren emerged from the cavern with a newfound sense of purpose, but also an overwhelming awareness of the stakes. The schematics stored in the archive were invaluable, offering solutions not only for Earth's recovery, but potentially for Xathera as well. However, carrying such knowledge came with risks. They couldn't trust anyone, not scavengers, not mercenaries, and certainly not corporate forces like Dominion Dynamics. As they prepared to leave the cavern, a faint sound caught their attention. Footsteps echoing through the tunnels. Someone, or something, was approaching. Amir motioned for Liren to stay behind him as he grabbed a makeshift weapon, a metal rod salvaged from the rover, and crept toward the entrance. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice steady despite the tension gripping his chest. A figure stepped into view, silhouetted against the dim light filtering in from outside. It was a woman, her face covered by a scarf, with piercing green eyes that glinted with intelligence. She raised her hand slowly, showing she meant no harm. "I'm Zora," she said, lowering her scarf. "And I think you two just stumbled onto something big." Amir narrowed his eyes. "How do you know about this place?" Zara smirked, gesturing to the tunnel behind her. "We've been watching it for years. My team, we're eco-rebels. We fight back against corporations exploiting what little life is left on Earth. When we saw those drones heading this way, we followed them. Imagine our surprise when we found you." Liren stepped forward cautiously. "You want to protect this planet too?" Zara nodded, her gaze softening as she took in Liren's glowing markings. "Alien or human, it doesn't matter. Anyone willing to help heal Earth is an ally in my book." Over the next hour, Zara introduced them to her small group of rebels hiding deeper within the ruins. Their base was a patchwork of scavenged materials and ancient tech, powered entirely by solar panels and wind turbines. They worked tirelessly to rehabilitate patches of desert into fertile land, planting hardy crops and nurturing tiny ecosystems back to life. "These are fragments of hope," Zara explained, showing Liren a greenhouse filled with budding plants. "But progress is slow. Corporations keep destroying what we build faster than we can repair it." Liren shared the knowledge she gleaned from the archive, explaining advanced techniques for sustainable energy and terraforming. The rebels listened intently, their faces lighting up with excitement at the possibilities. "This could change everything," one of them whispered, clutching a notebook filled with frantic scribbles. But not everyone was convinced. A grizzled man named Ravi crossed his arms skeptically. "What's stopping Dominion from taking this tech once they find out? They'll kill us all before letting it slip through their fingers." "He's right," Amir said grimly. "If they discover what we have, they won't hesitate to strike." Liren's expression hardened. "Then we must act quickly. Use the archive's designs to strengthen your work here while I create a diversion. If Dominion focuses on me, you'll have time to fortify your position." "No," Amir interjected firmly. "We stick together. That's how we survive." Zora agreed. "She's right. Alone, none of us stand a chance. But united," she glanced at Liren, then at Amir, "we might actually pull this off." With renewed determination, the group devised a plan. Using Liren's energy manipulation abilities and the rebels' guerrilla tactics, they would lure Dominion's forces into a trap within the tunnels. The goal wasn't just survival, it was reclaiming control over Earth's future. As night fell, the rebels began preparing defenses, fortifying the ruins with traps and hidden weapons. Liren practiced channeling her energy, creating bursts of light and heat strong enough to disable enemy equipment. Amir watched her, his heart swelling with pride and fear. This mission would test them all, but failure wasn't an option. The battle ahead loomed large, but for the first time since meeting Liren, Amir felt a flicker of genuine hope. Together, they weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for a world worth saving.